In the previous lesson, that's lesson number 6, we spoke about the king, we found out how he moved, and we identified his position in the normal setup of the chess pieces. But we did promise to return to the subject of the king, so we could look at check, checkmate, and stalemate in lesson number 7. Well, here we are, lesson number 7, time to delve into the secrets of the king. If you've been following the CSE worksheets, and or the Kahoot problems, you may already be familiar with some of the material which is to follow, which is fantastic because the more things you use to improve your chess skills, the better. There's the king, standing very proudly on e4. Before we talk about check, I just want to backtrack very slightly to this position. We have got a rook for white, and for black, a bishop and a pawn. Now if white were to move the rook to c5, we can see he's threatening to capture the bishop. And black would be advised to move the bishop, otherwise he's going to lose it. But there's nothing in the rules that say he has to move the bishop when he's under attack. He could, if he wanted to, move his pawn. And then the white rook could have lots of fun taking the bishop. So that wasn't against the rules for black to leave his bishop under attack, but it was not a very good idea. Everything changes when the king's involved. This is the same position as the previous one, except we've switched the black bishop for a black king. This time, if white plays his rook to c5, black cannot ignore this attack. Kings cannot be captured, and if he leaves his king there, it's in danger. When the king's under attack by something, it's called check. The white rook is checking the black king. Black can't ignore this, he's got to move his king. We'll find out more in the next position. For example, in this one, we've now got both of the kings on the board, just to prove they cannot be captured. And the white rook could go all the way down the board to attack the black king. The black king is now in check. He cannot be captured, so he can't go to d8, where he's on the same line as the rook, still going to be in check. He can't go to f8, where he's still on the same line as the rook. But he's got a choice. He could go to d7, e7, or f7. Anywhere where he's not on the same line as the rook will get him out of check. For example, let's go to e7. White could, if he wanted to, check the king again. Black could get out of check, and so on. It's a little bit annoying having to move your king out of check all of the time, but it's not the end of the game. This next position is more serious. If you look carefully, you'll see it's almost the same as the last one, except that white has 2 rooks. He's got an extra rook on h7 this time. White could move this rook down to check the black king. Now we know from the previous example that the king cannot be captured, and he's got to escape from check if he possibly can. He can't go to d8, because he's still in check by the rook. He can't go to f8 for the same reason. He'd like to go to d7, e7, or f7, just like he did in the previous example when he chose e7. But he's got a little bit of a problem this time, that the second white rook is controlling all of that line. If the black king tries to move off the back line, he's going to be placing himself into check by the second rook. This time there's no escape for the king. He's in check and there's no possible place to go. This means the king is in checkmate. Now checkmate ends the game. Up until now, we've been playing mini games with pawns and pieces. We've been getting pawns at the end to win. We've been capturing things or blocking things. Everything changes when the king is on the board. We win a game of chess by checkmating the opponent's king. Things like capturing pieces and blocking things, they'll all help you win the game, but it's important to checkmate the king. And all at the same time, of course, they're trying to checkmate your king. So it makes it a very difficult game. The king won't always be on his own. In this position, he's got a knight and a bishop. And he could, if he wanted to, place his knight to d8. And this blocks the check. The white rook is not checking the king anymore because the knight's in the way. So blocking the check is a possible way to escape from check. Another way to escape from check is to capture the piece which is checking you. The bishop on this occasion could go all the way down to a8 and capture the rook to get black out of check. So essentially there are three ways to get your king out of check, and they're all demonstrated by this position. In this one, the knight could capture the queen. It's a very nice way to get out of check. Or the pawn could block the check. And finally the king could just move away. It's got several choices, in fact 3 choices. These are all the ways we could get out of check. In addition to check and checkmate, there's another special thing that could happen, and that's called stalemate. Stalemate is quite different. In this position it's black to move. It looks like black's going to win easily. It's got a rook and a queen and a king of course, and white's down to his lone king. Normally in this sort of situation it'd be very easy to get checkmate. And in fact, if black were to move his rook all the way down to f1, that would be checkmate. The king can't move towards the queen. The king can't capture the rook, because if he tries to capture the rook, then the black queen will be checking the king again. If you try to do a move which is against the rules, it's called an illegal move. And for the white king to capture the rook on that one would be an illegal move. If we go back slightly, instead of playing the checkmate, black could do a whole range of different moves, but they're not all good moves. For example, if he thought about just moving his rook a little bit closer to the king, to f3 for example, thinking to himself, well, the closer my pieces get to the king, the more chance there is of finishing him off. This leaves the white king unable to move. He can't go to d1 because it's going to be checked by the queen. Same problem applies to d2 and e2. If he tries to go to f1, he's in check by the queen and the rook, so it's doubly bad. And he can't go to f2 because it's in check by the rook. If you can't move anything and your king is not in check, the game ends in a stalemate. And very unfortunately for black, a stalemate is a draw. Black should have won this game. It's ended in a draw because he's rather carelessly placed the white king into stalemate. So here we have the 2 kings, and it's very important to remember that check is so dangerous that the kings can't even go next to each other. They're not allowed to move next to each other. So you couldn't go there. That's against the rules. That's another illegal move. And the same problem applies to e5 and f5. So these would all be illegal moves for the king. And anyway, if you end up with a position with just 2 kings left on the board, that's a draw too. For this reason, we can't make any progress. We can't go next to the enemy king, and there's no chance of a checkmate. So as soon as you get down to 2 kings, the game is a draw. We will return to these difficult subjects in more videos, and there's lots of ways to draw a game of chess. We'll talk about all of those at a later date. I just want you establishing yourself with the basics for the first 9 videos. Get yourself up and running, playing some nice games, and then we'll cover everything in greater depth later. And we're back to the start position. You've done very, very well over the course of 7 lessons to learn all of the chess pieces, learn a little bit about check, checkmate and stalemate, and now you're ready for your first full chess battles. We've got 1 or 2 special moves to show you over the next 2 videos, number 8 and number 9, so please join us again then. But in the meantime, go and play chess.